All right. So here's the truth most agents never learn. In over 90% of Chapter 7 real estate cases, the trustee never sells the house. Welcome to another episode of Distressed Deals Decoded, brought to you by our sponsors, Asset Resolution Advisors, where real estate problems meet real solutions. My name is Juan Nicasio. I am joined by our amazing co-hosts, Steve Schiller and Patrick Butler, who are going to be pulling back the curtain on one of the biggest misunderstandings in distressed real estate. So, Steve, the big myth, do you need a trustee?
The
Talk to
short,
us a little bit about that.
yeah, the short answer is no. You know what a lot of agents and real estate investors have learned over the years is that, oh, once it's in bankruptcy, I can't touch this. It's, the property's done, it's finished, I can't transact on it. The trustee or whoever is the one who's the in charge of it, and we need to do this, we need to do that. There are some agents and investors who said, "Oh, I can go talk to the trustee." There's some who have been sharp enough to do it, say they're going to be my buddy and they're going to call me about all the deals. And, a lot of those deals don't really come to much of a fruition. Um, the reason that all this has happened is just, I learned this years ago when I got into the bankruptcy space, it's actually a really interesting story here. So I'd worked in mortgage servicing for 15 years prior to getting into the other side of the transactions and real estate, and specifically in bankruptcy real estate. And when we got into it, everybody said, "Oh, the trustee can do this, this, you did." And I'm like, "No, you can't. I've been doing servicing for 15 years. This is how it works." And we had a trustee say, "No, this is how it works." And as we started, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, everything I learned for the last 15 years was completely based on education passed on from years and years and years of managers and more managers teaching us this is how servicing bankruptcy works." It was completely wrong. And there were other solutions. And that's what's happening out on the opposite side, on the real estate side. So
Mhm.
yeah, the reality is most trustees at this point, they already have agents, they already have and that real estate investors they talk to. Very rarely do they reach out to somebody, and very rarely, in most cases, can they even do something about. And that's what we're going to uncover in the rest of our conversation here today.
Cool. All right. So the reality check is that most, trustees, you know, uh, go to an agent and it's rarely someone new. Is that normally the case where do they use the same people over and over, or is it different folks that they have, in their back pocket?
Let me explain how chapter 7 works. So in probably the simplest terms, right? Chapter 7 is a liquidation. Plain and simple. Just means that you
Okay.
file bankruptcy, a trustee is added to the case, and then the trustee has to liquidate anything that's non-exempt. I'm not going to go into all the other pieces, but basically there are assets, right? Cars, boats, houses, jewelry, tax refunds, whatever you want to call an asset, and that trustee is supposed to liquidate, and they're just supposed to sell them. In most cases with a property, they already have an agent that they've been working with for years, sometimes decades, that they're their go-to people, right? They know how to
Okay.
do this and so on and so forth. But in most cases, a trustee, if the real estate has no equity, is a short sale, fully exempt, has different liens on it, judgments, HOAs, whatnot. Most trustees feel that, oh, this is too much work to get to the final deal. I'm just going to walk away. So essentially, unless there's equity, there's just no
Mhm.
clear pathway for them to make money because that's part of the process of Chapter 7 liquidation. And so therefore they walk away. Well, I can tell you that from years of doing this, a 90, I think the number is something to the effect of 95% go nowhere. So only about 5% of all bankruptcies in a Chapter 7 have some type of liquidation. About 95% do nothing.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. I just out of curiosity because I'm coming from the investor side, right? Who evaluates the asset, whether it has equity or it doesn't have equity? Does the trustee just trusts the agent that is in their, in their side of the ring to kind of put it out there and try to liquidate it and come back with offers? Like, how do they even determine whether this property or assets have any liquidity at all?
That is a fantastic question. So the vast majority of trustees rely on what the homeowner, the debtor, right? What
Oh.
what they put in their schedules. So they look at the schedules and they say, here's home 123 Main Street. They owe 300,000 and the homeowner says, the debtor says it's worth 250,000. No pathway, I'm moving on. When in reality, that property could be worth 350 or $400,000. Most
Mhm.
trustees don't even go through the process of even seeing what it's worth. A lot do. There's a good amount that do that, they'll do a quick Zillow look or they'll do something to, see if there's any money in it and do a quick check if they're doing their job the way that there should be doing. So a lot of them do a quick look and, if there's again if there's enough equity, they'll do it, but it also has to the complicated part of this is a lot of it has to do with the exemption. And
Mhm.
there are multiple levels to the exemption. There's the federal exemption on what you can exempt, what equity you could exempt. There's a state one that you can choose, an exemption that sometimes is higher. So, like for instance, Florida, Texas, it's unlimited. So
Mhm.
there's no that you have all your equity can be exempted. The trustee can't touch it. So it's very hard to sell a equity deal in those two states because the homeowners can keep all their money. And then there's another wild card exemption that can be at. So there's all these different levels of exemptions, which is why a lot of trustees don't spend a lot of time even evaluating real estate. They just kind of take a quick look and say, yes, no, okay, move on.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Uh, my man Patrick, what is the golden opportunity criteria here
Yep.
in these
So,
cases?
and by the way, a lot of people don't know this. This is Steve and my second marriage. We ran a company that did nothing but bankruptcy real estate sales, and I will go all the way back to the first day that we started this. And Steve, you mentioned a trustee. There was a trustee out of Las Vegas that helped us do the mental check on if this made sense as a business opportunity. And the answer was a resounding yes. But this trustee even did not lead us into the right framework of mind. So over years, Juan, we felt okay, as a company, let's reach out to the 1,250 plus Chapter 7 trustees. Let's show them how we can put money in their personal pocket as well as in the estate, which is their fiduciary duty to the creditors. The trustee does not represent the homeowner, aka the debtor. They represent the creditors. They're supposed to liquidate these assets and put money into the account that will then pay off the other debt, which is the whole point of a Chapter 7. But Steve said it. They rarely ever sell anything. I mean, there are cases where they do, and they look for the whale, right? They look for the ancient artifact collection or something that's worth $25 million. But the average Joe and Mary Smith that file bankruptcy because they lost an income or there was a death in the family or an illness, the trustees rarely ever do anything. And what we heard over and over and over again was one, my judge won't let me do a short sale. I mean, we just heard that over and over again. And and
Wow.
and what was weird about it, Juan, is like, what do you mean your judge won't let you? It's first of all the law. Bankruptcy is a national law, and it's interpreted about 1,250 different ways by the trustees and the judges in the various court districts. But that was one. Number two, they said, if there's no equity in the deal, then it doesn't make sense for us to do anything with it, to Steve's point. But we developed a system where we could actually get the lender to pay them a 5% carve out, money over and above. So on that $300,000 sale, they can make $15,000 into the estate. Too much work. And we heard that over. It's just too much work. Even though even today we'll do everything. So what is this magical 90% rule? Well, because of exemptions, which is the number one reason why trustees don't sell homes with equity, we can take that and put it to the side. Number two, homes that are underwater, short sales. Trustees typically don't touch these, even though brilliant people like ourselves brought them a solution that could put money into their pocket and resolve the duties for the fiduciary. They didn't do anything with those either. And if there was too much work. So, well, what does that actually mean then? So, well, on a short sale, we all know that the mortgage amount exceeds the value of the property. And in many cases, these homeowners are in default. Now, this is an important point, folks. If the homeowner is in default and they're upside down, but they claimed an exemption, they are making a terrible decision for themselves. Their attorneys, in most cases, from what we have learned, don't give them much, if any, advice about what they should be doing. Their lender can't talk to them at all because they're in bankruptcy. There's a stay of any kind of communication whatsoever. So the poor debtor is now in this limbo area. They don't have any knowledge of what to do. Another thing that we said to the trustees was, let us show you. Let us go through the schedules. We'll take the debtors under oath verbatim, what they make, what they owe, what their expenses are, and they can't modify a loan. They can't reinstate their property. And Steve, what did we find out about most of those debtors that were in default and didn't sell their home?
They ended up in foreclosure.
Foreclosure. Of all the craziness, you filed bankruptcy to try and save yourself, and here you are back in foreclosure again. So the problem properties also present another opportunity. So again, we've got homes with equity that the trustee can't sell because of the exemptions. We've got upside down homes that the trustees won't sell because they don't think there's any value to the estate. Then you've got properties that have the asset resolution smell, right? They've got title issues. They may be in bad physical condition. The homeowners, in many cases, just left the home literally like mid-supper. They ran out, left the spoon in the soup, and the dog duty on the floor and all that good stuff. Or it might have been rented and just any other issue. So the bottom line to this segment of this thing is you don't have to worry about becoming the trustee's best friend because 9 out of 10 times they don't sell the property anyway. And there is something that Steve will probably share with you, or maybe it's coming up in the next segment for me, but there is a magical time in a bankruptcy, a singular moment, like the Big Bang. It's a singularity where you as a real estate investor or a real estate agent can literally go talk to the homeowner, counsel them about all these things that I just kind of shared, lay out the plan, we'll help you do it. And now you've got yourself an opportunity. Now we
I don't
can
know.
write that deal.
I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the hat, but is that typically when the trustee pretty much gives up and gives the property back to the homeowner? Is that
Yeah, yeah. They it's called abandoning the asset from the estate. So they will file some documentation. And Steve, I don't know if this is part of your thing, but I'll just mention it. But they file what's called a no distribution report that goes into the court docket. It's public record, and once they've done that, the trustee has washed their hands of that piece of real estate. And no matter what else happens, and if they close the case or the debts all get discharged, which is another thing, oftentimes the mortgage will get discharged but the bank still wants their money. How do they get it? By foreclosing on the collateral. So that's where this 90% rule comes in. That's where the opportunity lies. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, so Patrick, I'll one up you on this one and why we want to build this community and why this community I think is so important. I just had a trustee reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you look at this property? Trustees in Colorado. This property's in Central Texas. It's a nice $350,000 house, but it's FHA backed. Trustee wants to make 20 grand. There's just not a way for the trustee to make that money." And so this property just goes poof. It is now going to foreclosure. And why we want to build this community is we want agents, we want investors, we want people to be able to say, "Hey guys, here is a hot lead. Here is a property that the trustee's not going after, the homeowners don't live in. This is just going nowhere. This is something, if you can go take it, go run with it. And
Hmm.
it's yes, there's some hoops, right? You have to find the homeowners who live in Colorado. You have to have somebody in Texas, but these are deals that nobody's looking at today. It's not in foreclosure. It's not listed in the MLS. These are off market properties that are distressed that have to have some type of resolution, and they're just sitting there.
Yep.
Hmm. Until they decide to go ahead and just foreclose because
Yeah,
nothing is done,
yeah.
right?
And that's where
Okay.
the opportunities are.
So if I capture you guys correctly, the the order in where you know the control is, or the key players in the game, number one would be the debtor. So I'm assuming that like one of the key things that an investor or an agent should do is not back out of these type of deals because it's now in bankruptcy. I think probably that very first thing that you can do, especially in that initial stage, or almost in any stage of this process, is go to the debtor, go to the homeowner, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
convince,
and
yeah,
yeah, what I was gonna say is, and what we started off with, right? Most people are scared. Oh, they're in bankruptcy. I can't talk to them. It's not true.
Yeah.
They own that house. It's their house. You can go talk to them about their house.
The lender can't talk to them,
Correct.
okay.
but
Because
we can.
right,
Yes.
because the lender would be a creditor, and the bankruptcy postpones them from going
Yep.
after any kind of debt or speaking on the debt until some sort of restructure happens, right?
You got it.
Now, if you because most debtors, they hire an attorney because obviously, they're looking for some sort of counsel, legal counsel. So they won't really talk to you, or they don't feel comfortable enough to give you a listing, or, to make an offer because they feel that they're in bankruptcy and the attorney's now in charge. So I'm assuming the next order would be to contact the bankruptcy attorney.
So may I interrupt on this note? So you would think, right? And Steve, I know
Right.
you've got something you want to share on this too, but so we've talked to countless bankruptcy attorneys. And again, I don't mean to disparage any professionals in any aspect of this business, but many of the bankruptcy attorneys get paid a flat fee to handle the filing of the bankruptcy.
Okay.
They're not there to be your best friend. They're not there to coach you financially. In fact, most of them, I hate to say, don't have the skill sets for that. That's not what they do. They do their job, which is to file the bankruptcy. So we talked to attorneys that said, "Oh, I tell my client just let the bank take the property back. Just let them
Hmm.
have it. It's the same. It's the same as a bankruptcy. It's the same as a foreclosure." And they're wrong, right? It's just the craziest thing. I had to throw that in there. It's just
No,
my
I mean that's a really good point that that you can use to have that conversation with the debtor, right, with the homeowner, because they think that the attorney is like, holy grail, and what they say is what it is, and it stops there. But like you guys mentioned, there's a possibility that it goes either into foreclosure, or the trustee does not sell the property, and that is that, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
time wasted, it's a lot of uncertainty.
yeah, the one piece of advice I give to a lot of people with a lot of things, but especially with this, and it holds true in so many different facets of our life, is follow the money. Follow the
Okay.
money, right? Bankruptcy attorneys, that they have a fixed amount, they only make so much money. They feel that filing the petition and the schedules and getting the debtor, the homeowner, through from day one to day 90 or whatever it is, that's their fee, and that they don't need to do anything else, right? So it's not a matter of that all of them don't do it. It's just that as part of the service that they provide, they only do so much, and this is not all in their expertise. Real estate's a very specific knowledge base, and look, Patrick and I at one point talked to a state judge who managed foreclosures in the state of Florida, and he told us, he goes, guys, he goes, if you want to talk to an attorney or a legal professional who knows the most about real estate, it is federal bankruptcy judges. They absolutely know real estate law better than anybody because it's their job. Other than that, there's nobody else that I'd ever go talk to about real estate.
So, so what happens if you get stuck at the debtor's bankruptcy attorney? Is because there's I have some idea, but would it be okay then to go to the debtor and say, well, let me talk to your lender or the servicer? Is it
Yeah.
okay to bypass the bankruptcy attorney in that case?
Yeah, again, as long as you're not a creditor, you
Yeah.
have to talk to the attorney. I mean, there's certainly legal aspects to every real estate transaction, and there are ramifications to the deals that, the homeowner should really consider talking to legal counsel. But as far as just figuring out what their options are with the house and what they should do, whether they should sell, and just the basics of the real estate, that go talk to the bank, figure out what the options are, go talk to the homeowner, figure out what those options are. Those are normal everyday part of the transactions, and the bankruptcy has no stake on that first part.
As long as you have authorization, right?
Yep.
Because they're not going to just take your random phone call.
And
Correct.
no, and Steve, how many times do we run into situations once we turn the whole thing, the whole model on its ear, and we started working with agents directly with consumers, that they would get us on a conference call, and I'll never forget the one lady out of Georgia. She had like $150,000 in equity in the property, older lady, like 80 something years old. The neighbor lived right around the corner from her, and she knocked on the door, and so the old lady had her daughter and the agent on a conference call with us, and we were talking about this. And the reason why she had filed bankruptcy is her husband had an extended terminal illness, and they racked up pretty extensive hospital bills, and she was not able to afford to pay the bills. So push came to shove, beep, we helped her sell the house. She got her equity out of the property. And she goes, I'm just going to keep this in the bank in case the hospital still wants their money. And we're like, man,
Wow,
this has been discharged. You don't know anybody, anything, but that is how bad the information is being shared with the consumer by the people that they hired to represent them. Yeah. Oh,
well,
Juan,
that's
one other thing, by the way, with attorneys, another tip, another golden nugget. Because they get paid a flat fee, they generally don't want to do much outside of that. Well, we worked out a system with most of the banks that said, look, if the attorney can help us convince the borrower, your customer bank, to go ahead and do a short sale, would you be willing to pay that attorney an additional fee for their involvement? And they said, yeah. If the numbers work out, absolutely. So that's another angle of attack. If you know attorneys in your local marketplace, find the bankruptcy attorneys that are handling most of the business, the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of them are doing most of the deals. Get to know those guys, get to know their paralegals, and you will be amazed at how much opportunity comes your way as an investor.
that's a huge nugget, brother. That's sounds like a lot of money to be made on that side.
Mountains.
Now, question like I know at some point the courts have control of the deal. At that point, we just need to wait for some sort of deliverance from the courts as to what the debtor cannot do, discharge, sell it, keep it, and what
Yeah,
happens there because they control it. But there's got to be some sort of ruling, no?
yes, there's a aspect of the court process, right, that needs to be taken into consideration with the asset, right, based on what the law is. Um, but for the most part, the key to the initial pieces really come down to the homeowner, the debtor, and
Mhm.
getting in touch with them and talking to them about their options and understanding their financial situation. Again, what we talked about is, which I can't explain enough, is 95% of 90+% of the people get into
Mhm.
bankruptcy figuring that bankruptcy is going to help them resolve their housing issues, their housing finance issues, and most of them cannot through bankruptcy. It does not give them their fresh start. They're just, the at the bottom of this process is the court, because the court process for Chapter 7 is very short. It's not very long. And because
Mhm.
of that, when you look at the time frame, the court really doesn't have much say in the transaction because it's way past the transaction doesn't happen till way past the court process ends. In some cases, yes, the court can be involved and can be a resource, but I would say most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's not.
So it's a band-aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then, like we talked earlier, the last piece in the order would be really the trustee having real control over that process, because again, like they're looking for the low-hanging fruit, bigger payday.
Exactly. I mean, the hurdles a trustee has to overcome, they're pretty high, right? So first it's, well, did the homeowner exempt the property or not?
Mhm.
Okay, they didn't exempt the property. Can they amend their schedules to exempt the property? The answer is yes in almost every case. Then it's, okay, well, it's exempted. How much money can I make over the exemption to make this worthwhile to everybody, which is a very regional issue. Then are the numbers correct? Is the value, is the right? Real estate professionals have a problem with mortgages. So do the homeowners. Homeowners say, "Oh, I only owe 250." Oops. Yeah, it's 250 plus the partial claim, plus the second partial
Right.
claim, plus the mod, plus the, oh, oops, I no longer have $300,000 of equity. I'm actually upside down, right?
Mhm.
And that pisses off everybody, including trustees, because they think they've got this $200,000 equity deal. Find out it's a short sale and they don't want to do it. So, they have all these hurdles, and really that's why we don't see trustees transact on a lot. In some cases, they work with professionals who help them through that, but for the most part, the asset just can't move on to the next phase from a real estate perspective from their
Sure.
standpoint. But the practicality is it's a distressed asset and it needs to sell. We did
Yeah.
we did a we did a study recently, and it was staggering, of the people who have a mortgage, who have a house in bankruptcy, about 75% can't afford their mortgage. That's a staggering number.
And
Quite.
do they even have equity?
Some do,
Some do,
some do.
right?
They just don't know what to do. That's where the opportunity lies. And you don't have to be scared of the bankruptcy itself, because it for the most part turns out to be irrelevant.
Okay.
Yes.
So, if you know how to identify when the trustee is relevant, you can move faster, cleaner, and with less friction. Typically, what I'm learning here as an investor is I want to get to the debtor as fast as humanly possible and provide them with like real hardcore truth on what their real options are in their housing situation, right? So, Steve, how can we identify these golden nugget deals early?
First, a lot of people get data, right? They buy data, investors
Hmm.
or real estate agents, and they're looking at data. A lot of people just pass by anything that says, "Oh, it's in bankruptcy." If
Hmm.
it's in bankruptcy, it's fine. You can transact on it. Go do your normal due diligence, right? Find out who the homeowner is, what's the value of the property, versus the loan balance. Do they have an opportunity? Understand what your exemptions are in your state.
Okay.
Things like that, right? What's secured debt? What's unsecured debt? Some of that unsecured debt goes away. Even some of the secured debt can go away. A lot of this is public information and bankruptcy schedules. That's a different skill set, but it's available to you. But even if you just look at the real estate, just look at this as a real estate. Don't worry about the nuances of the bankruptcy as much as just looking for what the bankruptcy is, right? Or sorry, what the real estate is. When you look at the bankruptcy, there are a few things, right? When a creditor lifts the stay, that's means things are progressing faster than what everybody wants, right? It's moving towards foreclosure. Um, there's no asset reports, the non-distribution report a trustee files. That means they're not administering the case. That doesn't mean the case is closed. It just means they're not doing anything. And then in some cases, in some jurisdictions, trustees file what's called an abandonment language. All of this is available through Pacer. It's free online if somebody wants to get involved and look at that. But again, with the data they already get and what they have, they can see what's in bankruptcy. And then as they build this education of what's what does it mean? Where do I look? I found a good real estate deal. What do I need to know about bankruptcy? There's additional education you can get into to really hone in on it. But the first part really is finding what that real estate is and not being afraid to contact those homeowners.
Okay. And Patrick, I mean, what do you feel most real estate professionals miss these opportunities?
Yep. And I think part of it is, and this is really interesting, if you do your research to become educated on bankruptcy as it relates to residential real estate, chances are the information you're going to get from Google or whatever is the buy the book information, which is everything we've just talked about, which is bass backwards. Everything that we discussed doesn't make any sense because
Right.
the way that the bankruptcy system is set up, it's a failure. In fact, we could do, and we will do an entire other video podcast on chapter 13 bankruptcies, where believe it or not, 85+% of those never make it to the end of their 5-year plan because it's all botched up once again for all the similar reasons. So some of the big mistakes for agents is listening to the wrong people, right? So if you think you need to become a trustee's best friend, don't worry about it. 9 out of 10 times, you will never have to even talk to the trustee. These deals are ripe for the taking. They don't understand the exemptions, right? So a trustee literally can't sell the home if it meets qualified exemptions. That means nothing to you and me. The fact that a house has homestead exemption, which allows 100% of the equity to be exempt from a bankruptcy, means nothing when you're selling the property outside of the trustee's foothold. I mean, at that point, you can sell it. And by the way, the debtor can keep their money. That's an important piece of the puzzle, too. That old lady we talked about would have lost about $150,000 had she just listened to her attorney. And I'm not saying don't listen to your attorney, but get a second opinion and or try to have the trustee help her out. So that's important. They assume, much like solar liens, which we talked about and we'll talk about again, that once you see those words that the deal's dead. It's not. In fact, you should run towards the light when you see a bankruptcy because there are opportunities. And as you get educated, and that's one of the things that we will talk about momentarily, we'll show you what it is that you should be looking for, how to triage these deals as a real estate professional. And one of the big thorns in everybody's side and you need to solve for is when the consumer says, okay, I hear what you're saying. Where do I go if I sell my house? And that's a big
Mm,
one because let's face it, they've just been in bankruptcy. They may not be able to buy again for another 18 or 24 months. But the question I would ask in return is, great question. Where will you go when the bank forecloses and evicts you from your property? Take the time, make your move on your terms. Don't let the bank just throw you out. There's so many reasons for doing that. So that's it. And or they're intimidated by the process. It is a little complicated. I mean,
yes.
we are gluttons for punishment here at Asset Resolution Advisors, and we take on these gnarly, hairy deals. Again, I don't know why. We just do because nobody else will
Well,
do them.
that's exactly why asset resolution advisors exist, Patrick, because you
Truth.
guys love the punishment, man. You guys really don't guess. You guys really do analyze, all of these deals. We identify when the trustee is involved is required, and when it's not, right? And so we can go ahead and provide that know-how and help you piece the deal. Deals typically are not dead; they typically have a solution. And for those of you who want to truly master this niche, which you should, because the numbers that Steve gave are staggering, we created a 5-module bankruptcy specialist certification course for real estate agents and investors that you can get through our school community. What is entailed in that course? You will learn how Chapter 7 really works, how to read bankruptcy cases, when trustees matter and when they do not, how to structure compliant sales, how to build a referral ecosystem with attorneys and lenders. So huge, huge advantage there for learning how to do this so you can become the expert in your market and be able to capitalize on what this big bulk of inventory that is just sitting there needing someone who can guide these homeowners in the right direction. So, if this episode changed the way that you think about bankruptcy real estate, That's just the surface, guys. We have so much that we want to give you, but can't on just this platform. The full playbook lives inside of our community, like I mentioned earlier, and our certification program. So stop chasing trustees, start chasing understanding of this process. We'll see you on the next episode. Please make sure that you subscribe, that you like, that you comment, and join our community at Distressed Deals Decoded. On our next podcast, we will talk about, I believe it was, what topic was it, Patrick? You mentioned it yesterday.
Well, it will be on our next podcast, but our webinar, which is in
Ah,
tomorrow night, is on solar liens decoded and how
that's
to
right.
turn those into money.
That's a huge one. Huge, huge opportunity. So, again, thank you all for joining Distressed Deals Decoded. See you on the next one.